Welcome to PEAC-Train Like a Girl, a podcast by girls in sport, for girls and coaches in sport. We're here to amplify your voice. It deserves to be heard. At PEAC, we are a safe place for girls to hang out, to learn, to grow, and to build community. We empower girls in sport and coaches with knowledge, resources, and support we think is necessary to thrive in today's athletic environments. Join us for bold conversations about experiences of girls in sport. Our discussions will make you laugh, cry, cheer, for sure get a little frustrated, and rethink the future of girls in sport for generations to come. So whether you're walking, commuting, cleaning your dorm room, take us with you. Follow us. It helps more than you can imagine. Check out our website and make sure you share with a female athlete or coach you love. Now, I want to introduce you to two of my favorite people from the Illinois Human Performance Project, Julie and Abby. I have had the pleasure of learning from them. I've had the pleasure of collaborating with them, and I've had the pleasure of having them come work with my student athletes. And I will tell you, one of the things that I like best is they meet student athletes where they are at. They're willing to share their resources and information, but they're also willing to take a seat back and listen and learn, which is something I really like. The other thing that I think is super cool is that they lend a unique voice, and they're constantly reaching out and connecting people, and knowing that when we get stuck in a place where we're only hearing one voice, there isn't a lot of growth. And so they're really open to hearing a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different people. One of the last experiences I had with them is I got to take a group of my high school athletes to a separate high school where we were able to connect with different high school students, which was absolutely amazing, and learn from other mentors and leaders in high school. So that was a super fun activity for us, and it really just made me grow so much more in my respect for who they are and what they are doing at the Illinois Human Performance Project. So, Julie and Abby, are you guys ready to get warmed up?
We are ready. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
All right.
Excited to be here.
Abby, cat or dog?
Ooh, dog.
Nice. Julie, vanilla or chocolate?
Chocolate.
Nice. Abby, beach or mountains?
Beach.
Nice. Julie, movie or Netflix series?
Netflix series.
All right. What are you currently watching?
I'm watching Shrinking, but it's actually not on Netflix, so that's a bit...
That's okay. I didn't even mean to say Netflix. It's kind of like saying chapstick instead of lip balm.
Yeah.
All right, Abby, winter or summer?
Oh, summer for sure.
All right. Well, then I'm sticking with Abby. 4-star hotel or camping?
Camping.
All right. Julie, last one here. Taylor Swift or the Beatles?
Ooh. If both is not an answer, I'll go with my girl T Swift.
Nice. I love it. She's a hero where we work out. So love it. Our girls really love her too. So, but they definitely know who the Beatles are. I think there's going to be some point in my coaching career where I say the Beatles and people look at me with this blank face. Like, what are the Beatles? Yeah, me too. But I can see the day definitely coming. But thank you guys both for being here. Before we kind of dive into some of the things that I want to talk about in relationship to girls in sport, why don't you tell us a little bit about your relationship to sport? Julie, let's start with you.
My relationship to sport, I grew up actually always loving athletics, and anything that involved a ball or competition I was super drawn to it. So I've played all kinds of sports in my life. I played soccer as a kid, and then in high school I played tennis and basketball and volleyball, and somewhere in college I found my way on a softball team for a year even. So sports is an important part of my life.
Nice. What about you, Abby?
So for me, looking back at my, high school and collegiate career, if you will, I always say, like, I don't know why I just don't associate myself with someone who is like a traditional, and I'm sure we're going to get into this, but a traditional athlete, just because I was someone who just like bounced around a little bit. So I played a year here of that or a year of that. But ultimately my, core sports, I played softball, volleyball, and soccer, but it was never something that I'd never leaned into one of them, if you will. It was just something that I kind of dabbled in because my siblings or my friends were participating in it. I always found great value in all of the things that I received by participating in sport, but it was something that it just never came as naturally to me as I think it did to some of my peers or my friends. I've always been a big sports fan. So like high school sports and college sports specifically are something I've always been a fan of because it can be particularly competitive when it comes to sport. So it's always fun to have like, a team that you're cheering for. So that's kind of my experience around sport. And then of course, now what we do. And so just the experience of working with student athletes has been a whole new realm, if you will.
Yeah. So I'm curious for each of you, can each answer this, is we know that statistically girls who participate in sport in high school have higher grades, they have better self-confidence, and they actually go on to be higher producers in the work world. Have you both felt that this was your experience in relationship to participating in sport and how it helped you develop? Julie?
Yeah, I think my relationship with sports as an adolescent contributed to all kinds of successful factors for me now as an adult. Like it increased my confidence and my belief in myself. It taught me how to work through adversity. I had to, whether I liked it or not, develop a relationship with failure, when either I would miss a shot or lost the game, so I certainly, that statistic makes a lot of sense to me. And in my own life, I think it has helped me in my success as a human adult.
Yeah. What about you, Abby?
Yeah, I would say, I think a common thing I always say is, skill sets, they transfer, right? So things that we learn in sport, for instance, those skill sets transfer, let's say, to the professional world, right? Which is what you're kind of talking about. And so things like teamwork, time management, confidence, right? The ability to learn new skills or a new, let's say, position, right? Being pushed out of your comfort zone. Those are all things that I think I took away. But ultimately, like I said, some of those self-discipline and time management, which I think ultimately translate even to potentially confidence, right? In the end. So those are some of the things I think I kind of resonate with. And that statistic, I've seen many, athletes, females specifically, right, go on to be professionals in many other facets, right? Not even just within athletics.
Sure.
So definitely spot on.
Yeah. So Megan, I'm going to have you unmute because I'm super curious what you think about this. We talk a lot about this, about the ability to transfer skills from being a high school or college athlete into the real world. Do you think that it's helped you with time management and self-discipline and those type of things?
Oh, for sure. I definitely agree with this statistic. I think one thing I really liked was the stepping out of your comfort zone. And I feel like I find myself in situations where I definitely in class or, doing different things where I am at comfortable in first, but I'm like, okay, I've been uncomfortable before. I kind of have a process for it now. And the different environments, they still challenge me, but I feel like I'm definitely well prepared, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Abby, I want to circle back to something that you said, and I'm curious about this. When you talked about not having a ton of natural ability, that's me. I'm not naturally good at anything, but I work harder, I think, than anybody else out there. And when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to participate in sport, quite frankly. Title IX had just started. There wasn't a lot out there. But I never felt that I didn't have an opportunity. If it was available to somebody, it was going to be available to me. I'm wondering today, with the high specificity of sport, and now even girls in sport, so kids being trained at such a young age and specializing at such a young age, and kids being cut from teams, in middle school even, and certainly by freshman year of high school. Do you think that has an impact, like down the line? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, I do. Ironically, I mean, like, I'll just be a little transparent because you're touching on it right now. My freshman year of high school, like, I was going to be Abby, the volleyball player, right? And I played volleyball in middle school. So you're kind of touching on that in 7th and 8th grade. And then it was just assumed that everybody just moved on. But I was not one of those. I did not make the high school team. And for me, it's something, that I feel like I do inherently kind of carry it with me. Now, I never was in love with the sport, as I kind of shared earlier. So for me, I think I was easily able to just re-identify with something else, which for me was working. I was a server. I worked at a restaurant, and like that was my gig. But I think if that experience didn't happen, I probably would have stuck with sport all the way through high school and maybe even potentially a little bit beyond that. And so I think the pressure and, I was at a middle school a couple weeks ago, and the health teacher is also the basketball coach. And she said, like, I had to cut four kids today from the 7th grade basketball team, and just how hard that was for her because she's never had to do that. Like she said previously, it was like, 12 kids try out and they take on 12 kids, right? Like they didn't often have to cut because the competitiveness was a lot less, if you will. So yeah, I am thinking, as I think back to that current experience and my experience as an athlete, there's definitely some correlation there, right? With current even and thinking back to even my experience. So I do think, it kind of carries with you. But the biggest thing is what I shared is being able to re-identify with something else. And I think oftentimes that's not always the case for everybody, right?
Right. Yeah, because they don't necessarily know. Because those are the kids that get lost, right? Those are the kids that get lost in the system. When you're cut from the freshman volleyball team, nobody's following up with you like, hey, what are you going to do in your free time now? And that's one of the things about high school, right? Like you do have, and then college more, and then real life more, you do have more discretionary time, right? So now when you're getting out of school at 2:45, instead of going to practice for 2 hours, like all of your friends, you do have all of this time, right? And that you went out and got a job, but that's not what happens with a lot of kids. A lot of kids, get stuck in situations, where they're doing things that may not be in their best interest. So I just wonder what we can be doing from a high school perspective in particular, particularly those freshman and sophomore years, to keep kids, particularly girls, engaged in sport. Julie, what do you think about that piece?
So, I was just kind of listening, and I think not like a shameless plug, but I think that's actually one reason why I love the Illinois Human Performance Project, and kind of like the heart of it is it's all about like reducing the level of vulnerability in a student athlete, student leader, because already they're in a vulnerable position for all kinds of unhealthy potentials. So, the reason that we try to approach prevention this way from substances is because we think it's a really healthy thing to help student athletes and female athletes to raise their level of awareness around things like their relationship with sleep, nutrition, how they cope with uncertainties when they thought for sure they were going to make the volleyball team. And lo and behold, it didn't happen, right? Well, now what? And Abby was able to look at how she attached a portion of her identity to work, and that really was a good thing for her. And I think this program helps young women think that way. Your question was more like, how do they stay involved in sport? And I wonder if you increase your awareness of yourself, perhaps it would also just give you a level of confidence to try new things when certain things don't work out, to not get so stuck in maybe even rigid thoughts around, well, if I love volleyball and I didn't make the team, I guess I'll never play volleyball again. I mean, maybe there's an opportunity to play volleyball in a different way, or
100%.
consider a different type of physical activity or sport. Like, if that's not your jam anymore, what could be your jam? And then see a setback as more of an opportunity, as opposed to that's just not who you are anymore. That's one thought.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting because one of the girls who each of you have met, Lizzie, she was our student manager this year. And we're talking about volleyball, so I just want to circle through with this. But she was cut from the volleyball team as a freshman, and through exactly what both of you are saying. And we should absolutely do a shameless plug for the Illinois Human Performance Project, because that's why you guys are here, because you're doing exceptional work and we want others to hear about it. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. We do want to keep circling back to that. But one of the things that, we have done in the workshops that we have done with you and workshops that we're doing on our own is increasing confidence and leadership through other things outside of sport. So the point is, she was cut her freshman year and she did exactly what you said. She not only came out to be the student manager of the cross country team, but then she went and joined a club volleyball team where she can still go and do something because she thinks it's fun. But realizes her competitive days, quote unquote, may not be, the same. So I love that you talked about that we're giving kids the opportunity to say, listen, this may be who I identified as, but that's not, what is going to make or break me. There's so many opportunities. This is a big, huge world out there, and there's so much to do and explore. So I love that, growing in either the leadership skills that you are giving to students through the workshops that you're providing, or leadership skills through athletics, and or both, is giving these young girls opportunity to see themselves in a different light. So I'm wondering, just kind of even talking a little bit about what you do, how do you see the value of mentorship? And maybe not even mentorship from athlete to athlete, but coaches to athlete, or, former athletes to student athletes. Do you guys find that mentorship is a big part of what you talk about? Go ahead, Abby. Sorry.
That's okay. I mean, Julie can jump in too. Yes, ultimately, I often talk about the spider web effect of adults that support the spider or the student athlete, right, who's in the center of the web. And I always talk about the fact that I think sometimes we can often think it's just the parent's responsibility or it's just someone else's responsibility. But when you take a step back, what you notice is that every adult who's in an adolescent's life or an adolescent athlete's life, they have a shared responsibility to support that athlete. And so when it comes to coaches, I mean, we all of us here right now could probably talk about a coach that had a really positive impact, and maybe even the opposite of impact on our lives, right? But what it comes down to is they have impact.
Sure.
And so I think oftentimes it's reminding some of these coaches that it is a shared responsibility that you have with the parent and the school counselor and the educators and every other adult who's supporting this adolescent, in order to make sure that when they're in your care, right, they're taken care of, right? And that goes from mental wellness to physical wellness. And I think that's often what it comes down to, is reminding them you do have influence and you do have the ability to influence their choices around things like sleep, nutrition, mental health, and chemical health, even if you're their coach, right? And I've seen you do that, Anne-Marie, at your cross country at your cross country practice. At the end of practice, you took 30 seconds to remind them, hey, it's a Friday. Here's our agreed upon healthy and safe choices as a team. Now go have fun and have a good weekend, right? But you took responsibility to mention some of those things. And that's a lot of the work that we do, right? Is reminding them you have the ability to make influence. And here are some topics that we particularly find important that you should touch on.
Yeah, I think that's so good, Abby. And it's so interesting because, mentorship is a big word, and I love that you circled around so much of what a mentor is. I do want to kind of focus in a little bit on that piece, the taboo piece, because I say, these, decisions about, drinking and not smoking and, making decisions. And if you're not in a safe place, we do have a phone tree for people to reach out to. And a lot of what I sometimes hear from other coaches is, well, if you talk about it, you're going to give them the idea of it. And that is not what I believe. But Julie, I'm wondering what you think. You're the expert here. So what do you think as far as that goes?
Wait, what makes me the expert? Question mark.
Well, you certainly work in this space with enough people that I think you have an expert opinion.
I'm just teasing. So just to confirm, your question is, what do I think about bringing up ideas, and do they then put ideas in students' head to do?
Yeah.
Well, I think what the example you talk about is, the term is called normalizing. And I think what you're doing is just bringing up a topic that's very prevalent and happens within that environment. And so it's actually making it more of a safer place to have conversation about it, as opposed to not discussing, which would breed, in my opinion, less vulnerability than vulnerability. So
yeah,
it's important to bring up things that help young women ask themselves what they think about these topic activities and actions, and who's the type of person they want to be, and what are the actions that get us more in the direction of who we want to be and who we don't. And one thing that does come to mind, we work with Dr. Edwards, is a physical therapist, and also does a lot of cool breathing stuff. And he talks about, on the mentorship side of things, he just talks about how valuable it is to look at your athlete as a whole person, not just, you are my cross country runner and this is who I see you as. He just talks about the value of seeing them as a whole person and getting to know them and what matters to them, and who they are outside of their sports, as just a healthy way of mentoring and pouring into the next generation.
Yeah, I think that's right. Megan, do you have any input or feedback there in relationship to mentors, specifically coaches that you've had that you've either fit that bill or fallen maybe a little short?
I think I definitely have had experiences with both sides, but a positive one was definitely my high school experience with my club swim coach, because on top of, him improving my athletic performance and factors within that, he was super great at also giving me career and academic guidance and just overall building my confidence and self-esteem. And he would ask, more specific questions related to me, specifically as a female as well. We had a really open, I would say comfortable relationship. So that was one thing that I really, really loved. And I just felt super supported, and I feel like I had a lot of personal growth with him. So
nice.
I was definitely well prepared for college through him.
I love that. I can't believe we're almost through with this podcast, because it's been such an incredible conversation. But I want to circle back and talk a little bit about intensity and being in sports. And one of the things Megan and I were talking about before the two of you popped on the podcast is, in a sport like swimming or cross country, the cycle is super long. You start training back in June, and, the state series for cross country is in November. I think swimming starts a little later and they finish sometime in January. Anyways, my question here is trying to help athletes or young girls understand that the dial of always being on doesn't have to be there, that there are days that, on a Sunday, maybe you have a rest day and you sleep in a little and you make pancakes and go to church or watch Netflix or whatever that is. and maybe you're practicing, but you don't have to give, 110%. And I think that because we have so many ways to see what other people are doing and to compare ourselves, that our dials are turned so far up now that we don't know how to turn it down and kind of ride that lower wave before we take the wave up. Like, Julie, do you have any information there or any resources or help that you think that could be useful?
Yeah, I think this question is a significant big topic. I think this is where, back to something we talked about at the beginning, I think this is where your relationship with yourself is super important. As girls, our society sends us all kinds of messages about who we are, who we're supposed to be. And I think pausing to learn who you are as a young woman, becoming aware of yourself, like, what's the type of athlete that I want to be? Who do I want to be outside of my sport? What do I think about winding down and pausing when the dial feels like it always has to be on? A lot of that is even just emotional intelligence, awareness. One thing that comes to mind is Audrey Grunst from Simply Be has a great book on resilience, and the foundational pillar is all about self-awareness. And there's like a super simple worksheet in there that helps you literally pause and like not operate on the dial, more like just take a little inventory of self in order to then become more aware. So that's one resource that comes to mind for me.
That's awesome. We'll definitely put that in the show notes. Abby, do you have anything?
I'll just add, one of the things that came to my mind immediately when you were talking was, we touch on this often in like the nutrition world, but I think it is relevant for everything, is what we call the 80-20 rule.
Sure.
And it's really simple in the fact that, like, listen, especially for performers and high achievers, like, 80% of the time, that's amazing and that's beautiful, but we need that 20% to recover, to recoup and prepare for the 80%, right? So if we don't give ourselves that time to rest, for our muscles and our bodies and our brains to recover from the go, 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 we aren't going to be able to perform as our best selves in that 80%. And so I think just reminding ourselves, like, yes, we want to achieve things and we have goals and all of these things set aside for ourselves, but we can't do that 100% of the time. We still need rest and time to just be who we are. And that's where that 80-20 rule, I think, really comes into play. It's something that I would love to just have ingrained into athletes' mind, is just like 80% of the time, like, yes, yes, yes. But remember, 20% of that time, right? It's okay, right, to take a break. And actually, you need that break in order to be the best athlete, the best student, the best professional, the best anything, right? And so that's what I wanted to add to that, is just, it's important, right? And I understand that, like, go, 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 but we can only really do it at about 80%, right? And then giving ourselves that time to recover is actually vital.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think both of those, that was really great advice. And I love both of the resources there. And just that reminder, that visual of that 80-20, I think is super beneficial. And that 80-20, by the way, can be on any given day, but it can also be over the course of a month or the course of a season, right? So it can be applied in the micro or the macro level. So I really love that because I think it's super easy. I want to ask a question that may or may not have an answer. I'm just mostly curious of your response. Do you think it's the mind first and then the body follows? Or do you think it's the body first and then the mind follows? Julie, what do you think? Just curious. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
Well, from the hip, I'm going to go with the mind first and the body follows. There's a lot of thoughts out there like the body keeps the score. So sometimes you can feel a pain in your chest, and really that could potentially be something like anxiety, which is, mental. So that's my answer today.
What about you, Abby?
just because this is where I went first, I'm going to lean the opposite, and I'm going to say the mind, because I think when I think about like performance and the work in prevention, I think we do lean a lot on brain development, brain health. And we're often talking about like the things that we can do to support that, and also things that we can do to not support, right, our brain health. But Julie, I actually giggled when this question was asked, because there's a phrasing that you have actually used that I've heard, or we used in a presentation recently, that was, if the brain doesn't work, the body doesn't work. If the brain doesn't work, the body doesn't work, I think is exactly how it was. But I think it comes down to, right, like if our brains aren't where they need to be, our bodies aren't going to be where they need to be. I believe our bodies follow our brains. So,
I think that's what Julie said, right? Isn't that what she said?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
What about you, Megan? Do you have a thought?
I am so torn right now, but I like, this is hard, but I like what you just said, Abby. That makes a lot of sense to me. I feel like, I've always heard from, coaches or people here and there that your body's going to give out before your mind. So I think I'm going to have to go with your mind.
That's what I think too. My background is obviously in, strength and conditioning. So I'm not a psychologist. I don't play one on TV, and I'm certainly not one on this podcast. But I'm thinking we've all got it right. I think we just all won. Well, we are going to go ahead and get cooled down. We could obviously talk for a long time, just spinning ideas and thoughts off of each other. So I am so super appreciative that both Julie and Abby from the Illinois Human Performance Project took time out of their full schedules to be here. So Abby, as we cool down, I'm just curious, what is something that you do to calm your mind and your body?
The thing I do most frequently is walking. I have a very energetic big dog. And any and every time where I'm just like, okay, I need a change of environment, a change of pace, change of speed, I will usually get him and go for a walk. So walking is usually something that is my go-to.
Nice. Julie, who's your favorite female athlete right now?
Ooh, I was thinking I was answering the other question. Give me a second. Favorite female athlete right now. So I'm going to go with Billie Jean King. She's an old school tennis player. I read her memoir not too long ago, and I just was really inspired by her pursuit as a female athlete and her desire to move the ball forward for all female athletes.
No pun intended. All right, I'm going to ask you both the same question here. Abby, the best or the worst advice a coach has ever given you?
Ooh, I think the best advice, especially being in the position I am now, is that you can practice as hard as you want at practice, but if you don't take care of your body outside of practice, it really isn't worth it. You have to kind of do both things. And so I think there's a lot of focus on nutrition at the time. And as a young athlete, I was like, yeah. Right. But now thinking back, it was like, how could that have changed the game for our team if we were putting in that similar effort at practice as we were outside of practice?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that just has stuck with me. And the worst advice, I don't know. I'd have to think about that one a little bit more. Anne-Marie.
All right. Yeah, you don't have to come up, but you can do either or. Julie, do you have either the best or the worst advice that a coach ever gave you, or you've heard from a coach?
Yeah, I think some of the best advice I've ever gotten from a coach is to look to others for their approval of me as an athlete or teammate will always fall short, but to have the belief in myself of who I am is something that would be a game changer. And that's something I've always carried with me.
I love that. That is definitely an awesome place to pause and to stop. Thanks everybody for taking the time to listen, whether you're cleaning your bedroom or on a walk. We are so glad that you are here. Don't forget to follow us. Make sure you're sharing our episodes. Join us on Instagram at PEAC-Train Like a Girl, and take a minute to explore our website. We'll drop all the links to everything Abby and Julie talked about.